Alrighty, gentlemen. How we
Let
doing?
me go. Let me go.
You ready to rock?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Ready to roll.
Water here, mate.
Got dice here.
Just making sure the lips in
You got your lunch box?
And my
you know,
water. Yes.
You got your water. Lunch box. Anyway, inside joke. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of The Living Room. As usual, it's me, Andre, with my good friends Philip and Mark. Also, we got to say welcome to the guys on Carib Vision as well. The Carib Vision Facebook page are now streaming our show live as of today. So we want to say welcome to those guys as well. So look, if this is your first time here on our platform, this is We Global. This is our show, The Living Room, where we just get together and have some good Caribbean conversation about all kinds of stuff. As I said, it's The Living Room, so it's fairly relaxed. We have a laugh, have a chat, and invite some people from around the region to join our conversation as well. So welcome, hit share, invite your friends, invite your networks in to have a conversation with us. So let's go. How are we doing, guys?
Yeah, man.
All
Good.
good.
All good.
All good? All good.
Yeah, man.
Excellent.
Yeah. Fantastic week. You know?
You seem really.
Mark seemed happy to be a fantastic week.
I was going to use the word. I was going to say chipper.
Chipper. Well, he usually he's been. He's
I had a sleep. I had a sleep today for the first Sunday in a long time.
Oh, you had a nap.
Yeah. I went like that for an hour, man.
He like a baby, you know, when you get restless, you gotta get a little nap. And
Seriously, I had to go and get a little sleep today, man, because, you know, by the time 7 o'clock come around, and it has come around real fast.
Okay. No problem at all. That's good. A little nap is always good. Good to see that you had one.
Yeah, man, so I good. I can't no complaints here at all. No complaints.
That was before eating or after?
Wait.
Somebody saying inside jump must be interpreted.
That's outsiders. Man, we get that one, man.
People ain't outsiders, one is insiders.
True.
Insiders. You should know that by now, Angela. You're an insider.
We just heard Philip getting his final instructions there before we came on, so you know, it felt a little bit like, you know, when you're at the school gate and mommy's leaving you, and you say, "You got your pencil?" Yes.
You know? and then she do so look. That was literally just happening. Yeah. So you always see that.
That's all it was, Angela. So we were just saying you got your lunch box.
So we were just making sure he was all right. That's all we were doing. We were just making sure that Philip was all right.
It's all good. Yeah.
All good. So first we could back to school for the kids.
Yeah, man. I was.
Oh, that's probably why you're so happy.
Well,
thank you, Suzanne.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. The kids, Chris only went back on Thursday anyway, so you know he was only at the house once this week. So this is the full big week coming here now, man.
That is true too. But the girls are knockout, man. By the time you come home, man, you didn't have to say get to bed, nothing at all. It was just like, oh. And then funny, one of the things that they were saying as well is that how hungry they were, because obviously when they're home, they're snacking, they're doing this, they want this constantly. And then the girls were just talking about how all their friends, all their stomachs were just growling before lunchtime. Everybody was just hungry. So it's interesting to see those little things that change, those little nuance changes when they were home for such a long time, and then all of a sudden back to school. So that was good fun.
Yeah. When Miles was leaving on Monday, he looked back at me and said, "So I hope you have a good day on your own without me to distract you.
Hey,
sat in front of your computer, lonely." And I told him, "Yes."
You going for the guilt?
Him, yes. See you at 3.
He was hoping that you said, "All right, stay home with me, buddy." He was.
You know, I just tell him, "See you at 3 o'clock."
I think that's what he thought was coming. I thought he thought that was going to come. You tell him to stay home. But yeah, man, it seemed to have went fairly well. So
yeah, I think so. I see you was putting on a serious thing there yesterday, Phil.
What's that?
I noticed when we were having a chat with you yesterday. In fact, I calling it a so-soft.
So-soft.
yes.
So listen. F you in the chat. This is there's, let's call it left sauce and right sauce, right? So I think one of these was done by Phil, and one was done.
I can spot mine. I know my sauce.
You know your sauce.
The color.
I can see the signature.
So let me throw it in the chat, man. Let me see if people in the chat can recognize left sauce or right sauce. Which one you
left
think
sauce
is really?
wins. Angela, might it be just the lens? Maybe it might be just be the aperture of the lens. You know, you never know. You never know.
So do you think Philip is left sauce or do you think he's right sauce? I don't know. You know, I just thought we'd throw it out there and see what people think. You know. But either way, you know,
right
they both look fantastic. And you know, before we disclose which one was yours, how because you know, sauce is only body looking, you know. So what was the consumption? What was the consumption like in your house, just out of interest?
So the feedback that I got was, "This is excellent." That was Nicole, my wife, and I even convinced Adrienne, my daughter,
to try piece,
to try some, and she thought it was. Yeah, she thought it was good.
Wait. But did she eat more?
No.
Exactly.
but in all fairness, I think that would be the case with any sauce that she ate.
But exactly, that's the thing.
She even came downstairs and told me, "Oh, it actually looks like what I googled."
Ooh. Oh, she googled it. Okay.
Aye, there's right sauce.
Right sauce. The evidence is in the last name there, so I ain't sure about that one.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So yes, my man done sauce yesterday. That is his on the right. I think it was Kieran that just said it's colorful.
It's colorful. I like that. That's good feedback.
but as his Phil thing though, when he was telling us the ingredients, because you know Phil was giving us the ingredients first, we weren't sure what he was doing because as it is Phil, it could have been a bread, it could have been a pudding, it could have been a flour, or it could be sauce. You don't know.
It's sauce.
So none of us wanted to hazard a guess, right? We were just like, you tell me, because we ain't sure.
Yeah. It went on really well.
I'm pleased for you, man. I'm really pleased for you. I don't touch the stuff, so it's good. It's good to hear.
When you say you don't touch the stuff, what do you mean?
I mean, you don't let touch your lips.
Nah,
go straight down.
He swallow whole.
Nah, I don't really eat sauce that kind of way though, as people would say at home. That kind of way though.
You don't report? You don't? That's what you're trying to say?
There's just something about sauce that I don't know. I don't even eat pigtails actually. No, I don't touch the stuff, man.
Man.
I know that's a delicate.
Yeah.
That's a good word, Philip. Delicate. Yeah. Delicate. I like that word.
Anyhow, let me move on from that one because I see people getting a little polite there now with Phil talking about it. Like, what was that, Suzanne just said?
It looked as it
should.
Oh, thank you.
I love that. So I also would like to say, Happy Mother's Day to our UK mums. It's Mother's Day here in the UK today. If you're joining us from here in the UK and you were celebrating today, we hope you had a fantastic day. Hope that the We Global team did what they should.
Of course. I guess the question is though to the guys, Phil, do you celebrate both days? As in the UK and the Caribbean Mother's Day, when everybody else is getting Mother's Day stuff as well. Do you guys do both?
The suggestion I've been given is yes.
The suggestion. It was suggested to you that you do both.
Yes.
Okay,
I think it's okay.
This is okay. No problem.
Yeah.
Please do both too. Please do both, man. Yeah, why not?
You should.
And of course, this coming Mother's Day is going to be the first for us here on Be Global, so we're looking forward to that one too.
Well, this is true. We got to celebrate that big actually for our mothers.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Roll on, June.
Indeed.
So you've been keeping your eye across the region this week, man?
As always, I see vaccinations turning up like Bush, as we would say. Across the region, the vaccine turning up there all over the place.
All of a sudden now.
I saw India sent a whole bunch there for the OECS and Suriname and what's not. See things happening. I think Jamaica's got pushed back, but I think they should have that by now. Have some as well, and it seems some all over the place, man. Every Trinidad again, I think so as well. So yeah, so that's a good thing. I think that seems to be the way that you're gonna get yourself out of this at the moment, especially when you're having a third wave.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks on our show, we were talking with a lot of uncertainty and trepidation about what was going to be the status of vaccines in the Caribbean. But well, things are moving.
Well, I still think they got a lot of people that probably would be saying that they're not taking it, or they're hesitant, or they're waiting. I know a good few friends that saying, they're waiting to be one of the last just to see what happened to people, if anybody grow wings or turn green or anything. So,
And I think, I think that's fair.
So I think so too. Not necessarily growing rings or turning green, but I think the hesitancy, it's a natural thing. In normal times, there's that hesitancy around medicines. And I think now, given the speed and all kinds of different things, people will naturally have some issues with that. But then it goes to the question as well, did we in the Caribbean do enough to educate early enough? I got a view on that one, which is no.
and we got a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do in that regard, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So what have we got in the living room today, man?
Yeah, man. So one of the things that we always talk about is tech and technology, and of many different ways of how we use tech. And obviously, Philip is our resident tech guy, so to speak.
So-called.
Indeed. But one of the things, even during this COVID period as well, one aspect of tech, especially the e-commerce aspect and what's not, is one of those areas that came huge, because obviously that just hit us in the face when all the lockdowns happening. How are people going to get their groceries? How are things going to work? And it exposed a lot of gaps and issues across, from that perspective across the region. But in a broader conversation around tech as well, we just thought, what's happening across the Caribbean? Where are we? What are we doing? Who's doing what? What areas are we involved in? Are we ready to be part of the global conversation around the use of technology and certain aspects and certain different techs that can be used and applied within the Caribbean context? Are we in that discussion? So we thought, hey, let's bring that discussion here in the living room and let's have it.
I said, interesting, Andre. You said the use of technology, but I hope we are ready to push it both further out and talk about the development.
Yeah, and the development. There you go.
Listen, you know he gonna be a heat element this evening, right?
I can turn off my camera now, and I can just check you all coming out right in.
What did you feel?
But so today we got Glenn in Jamaica, we got Michelle Marius in Jamaica as well, and we have Nisa Pierre in Trinidad, and we're just gonna have a good conversation about technology, the state of it in the region. As Philip was saying, what are we developing? Are we developing? Are we in that global conversation and being contributors, as Philip might say, and not just being consumers? That's
you read my blog.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So guys in the audience, if you're there, hit share, get as many as your network in as well, because I think this is going to be a really good discussion, because we're all impacted and we're all users of tech in some form or fashion. So I think this is a really apt conversation for the entire region. So do us a favor, hit share, invite all your friends into this conversation as well. So now we're going to go ahead and invite the guys in.
Yeah, man. Open the door. Hey
guys.
Hi.
Welcome.
What's going on, man? Good to see you all. Welcome.
First,
Thank you.
First time was in the living room.
Well.
Yes,
and I saw you came in there with some big smiles, man. Excellent. Must be a great day across the region. Michelle, how are you? Let's start with you in Jamaica. We know how they've been still the continuing COVID situation before we get to technology. How are you? And how are things?
I'm good, thanks. I mean, busy, but I can't complain. If busy is a problem, I have absolutely no problems.
Good. Excellent. And just give us a little bit of context, first of all, about your angle of technology. Not too much. Just give us a little bit of brief introduction. Talk a little bit to the audience.
Okay, then. So I'm Michelle Marius. I'm the editor and publisher of ICT Pulse. And I run a consulting business called ICT Pulse Consulting Limited. But I'm also the owner of a platform called Project Calls. And what I do on Project Calls is collate project opportunities, so tenders, bids, and so on from across the Caribbean. Because if you have ever worked as a consultant or in that sort of field where you're an independent contractor, one of the biggest challenges you tend to have is the fact that you're continually looking for the next job. You know, whatever it is, the job you have might be good, but it's going to come to an end and you need to line something up just so, you know, your income doesn't drop too much. Because one of the things, of course, in being some sort of independent contractor, there can be like a feast or famine situation.
Oh, yes.
And to the extent that you can manage the famine time, the better. So one of the things I had experience in working in consulting is just the fact that you continually are on the lookout, and it can take time in terms of time out of your day to search for the opportunities. And the point is that you can go and check your sites and all of your, you know, as when I used to work in New Zealand, they'd say, you know, check the traps, you know, so like, you know, you're hunting traps and stuff like that. So you go and you check all of the resources that you have, but you can do it today and something might come out this afternoon. And you miss it. So you continually have to go and search. And that can take up a lot of time. So to the extent that, you know, I just collate what is publicly available so that if you as a, you know, independent contractor wants to, you know, at least have a sense as to what is available, what you might be able to bid for, etc. Project Calls is a place that you can do to do so.
I like that.
Brilliant
I like
resource.
that.
Wow.
Yeah, man. We're going to get into that in a lot more detail for sure.
Indeed.
Great.
and Glenn, yourself staying in Jamaica?
Yeah. I'm good. Waiting for the job, but I know I'm going to be waiting for a very, very long period of time.
Yeah.
Waiting for the job.
Yeah.
And set some context around you and what you're doing.
Okay, so I'm Glenn. I am the founder and project director for a micro indie game development studio called Sprite Range Studios. We're based out of Kingston, Jamaica. We focus on narrative games and just try to build out the gaming sector here in Jamaica and the wider Caribbean. I'm also the self-appointed loudest member of the Jamaica Game Developers Society.
Loudest member.
The loudest member. It's not really
Self-appointed
volume,
and loudest. Wow.
Yeah, it's not very much volume, you know. It's just persistence, really. Which is a grassroots community of nerds who want to learn more about the business and craft of interactive media and games and stuff like that.
See, I'm glad you said that, right? Because non-tech people can't call tech people nerds. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
you know.
We own it. We own it.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm
So we're allowed to use that term this evening, right?
Granted.
Hey, Anisha, what about yourself in Trinidad? First, how are things going in Trinidad? One, and then two, what space are you occupying around this whole tech in the region?
Well, first off, hi everybody, and thanks again, guys, for having me. It's my, as you said, first time in the living room, and I see your chat is already on and popping, so I'm excited for the next couple hours. Trinidad is okay. I mean, we're certainly not locked down. Some things remain closed, namely our borders, but you know, there are a couple other businesses that are kind of either on, you know, limits, you know, restricted to limited numbers, etc. But for the most part, you know, I think we're doing good, just kind of waiting to hear when next borders will open. And of course, an update, a very critical update needed on our vaccine situation. But I think otherwise we're, you know, chugging along. As for me, I am probably the noob and the least techie person on this panel. But as we say in Trinidad, I'm trying a thing. So I have just recently launched in December a courier service done a delivery company called Move. And the feature of Move is actually the first electric tricycle brought into Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, it's one of the first in the Caribbean. The only other I've seen is in Bermuda.
Okay.
So that has been pretty interesting, kind of watching the response to it. Of course, you know, from a policy perspective, it really took quite a lot to kind of, you know, get it into our system, but it's here, and hopefully and soon there will be quite a few more.
No.
What's the response been like to it so far?
Well, I have to tell you, I knew that. I mean, when you see it, it really is. You're kind of like, what is that? It looks like half a car. You kind of wonder where the rest of it is.
Yeah.
Especially if you see it from behind, it really looks like 3/4 of it is missing. So I knew that when I finally got the permission to put it on the road, it would go. It would draw some attention. But it's been quite crazy every time I put it on the road. It's like a social media thing.
Let's have an early look.
With lots of people.
What is this kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. Lots of people, more than I thought, and it's now actually causing me to add on a new dimension to the business model. A lot of people are actually interested in purchasing.
Buying the vehicles.
Yeah, because they recognize, this push towards EVs and movement away from, internal combustion vehicles. They recognize, the benefits to the environment, and to be honest, there's a cool factor. So you want to be the one to have it.
Indeed.
As the only transport expert here, and somebody called me that this week, and I almost fell on the floor. Somebody called me a transport expert this week. I was like, "What? Oh yeah, it's true. I'm a transport."
Yeah, but you put on only. You put in only there.
Yeah.
You see,
I got my driver's license.
I can drive too, and I think I'm all right. But anyhow, as the only transport expert, carry on, Mark.
MV Global. Let's
expert in the world.
Let's go around the circle then. So let's talk through your show and tell first, Nisa, before we go back around to our other guests. So here we are seeing the vehicle.
This is really cool. I like this.
Green energy.
Yep.
On demand. Calypso. I love that name.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, the funny thing is, it's actually a carnival story.
Oh,
so. Like
Talk
I said,
us
probably the least techie person. It's not a huge tech story, but essentially it was, Carnival Monday 2019. I was out quite late and I couldn't find the van, and I'm walking, looking for the van. I'm like, I should be able to just jump into this cute little branded thing that kind of takes me around. And really and truly after Carnival, so began this search for, something like this, something that I've seen, in my own travels, and noticing that it just wasn't available or just in the region. So it really did start off as a Carnival story, but, we have lots of plans for expansion into other islands and use for, different applications. So, one of the original applications was for and you can't hear a thing, of course. One of the original applications was for tourism, and then COVID hit, so we've kind of had to be forced to use the word that I absolutely hate at this point, pivot. But and find other applications. But that's the beauty of technology like this. It really is applicable to many different areas. So we really look forward to, as we grow up, seeing how else we can apply, Calypso and soon to be her fleet of sisters to, to different fields in Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, across the region.
Wow.
So this is me driving, and I have never, as you can see, it's mounted like a motorbike. I never in my life rode a motorbike, but it's really very, easy to handle. It's also low speed, so quite safe. And it comes like completely pimped out, right? So I have, reverse sensors and cameras, and it's air conditioned. Each thing at the top is a little solar panel that gives it a little bit of juice to go home. So I really do quite love my little Calypso.
No, that is special.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's special, very special indeed.
And how do people go about booking it? What sort of system do you have in place?
So what, like I said, it is actually a delivery service. So because it's electric, it would be limited by distance. So we do use Calypso for short distances, particularly in and around Port of Spain. But we'll also be soon starting tours, of course, COVID, adhering to all COVID-friendly protocols. So, as I had mentioned earlier, the original, one of the original outlooks was for tourism, which we had to delay, but, we're doing some work in terms of domestic tourism here. So like I said, limited to distance, but we also do offer nationwide delivery, and we use almost like an on-demand kind of rideshare on-demand service. But our drivers are they all own their own vehicles, but they're all drivers of hybrid vehicles, kind of in keeping with trying to be green and energy efficient. So you can either book on our website, which is movegreen.com, or easy get us on social media or WhatsApp and book your deliveries, and we move everything. I wouldn't say I have a particular industry that I serve. Our mission really is to help small and medium-sized businesses have delivery services and kind of expand their own networks and their own capabilities. So yeah, that is what we do from Sunday to Sunday.
That is absolutely fantastic. We're gonna dig into that story. So thanks for the show and tell. That is absolutely fascinating. And Glenn, just to come back to yourself, when people talk about gaming, me and Mr. Barra here, we grew up gaming.
You want to date ourselves by telling people the which computer we were gaming on back in the day?
Nah, I ain't bothered to do that.
The 286.
Yeah. But we
laughing.
My laughing.
Listen,
right.
let me move up to the 386. We were speed demons,
that was
boy.
Like heaven.
And on top of the Pentium. When the Pentium come out, we done moving.
Oh my goodness.
Listen, the man shaking his head like, yo, these fellas are crazy.
What?
Man.
What?
No.
But listen,
I find
man.
all that interesting still, because I personally have done like a bunch of research into the history of gaming and whatever, and coming back from Activision.
Like you put there, Glenn, the history of gaming.
Man, straight in museum there.
This is the days when you had 7 3.5 discs, right?
Yeah.
You had 7 3.5 discs, and you had to upload them in order.
Yes.
And if one error happened on disc number 5, you had to start over again. The whole process before you could play this game. FIFA 98 and thing, we had all that, man.
We had those days, man. So when we're talking technology in the living room, and we're going from what's happening in the electric and green energy side, and people don't realize we're doing a lot of gaming in the Caribbean. So Glenn, look, let's do the show and tell, man, because I love this.
I like it too. Let's do that.
Awesome. Check these codes out.
Wolf 3D days, Mark. Remember these?
Yeah. You won't be able to handle this.
No, this is getting me dizzy. Motion sickness there on me now.
Grape and tonic. I like it.
I'm feeling this.
Meet the warrior.
Yeah.
Armor up.
I'm feeling this stuff though. I like it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. So just to talk a little bit,
give us this. Tell us, man. Absolutely.
So that was a super cut of some projects that the community, the Jamaica game development community, would have done over the years. And we had put that trailer together for the Global Game Jam 2021, which we have hosted the Jamaica Jam site for the past 4 years, partnering with Carimac and Listen Me Animation Studios the past.
All right.
Yeah.
So, is that a virtual forum or is that?
We had to do it virtually this year because of COVID, but for the past couple of years,
is it?
Carimac has opened up one of their auditoriums for kids to come in, for other enthusiasts to come in and just participate in a in a hackathon. That's what a game jam is. It's a
Brilliant.
Oh, wow.
it's a hackathon, a 3-day hackathon where you just get a theme and you're supposed to make a game. And it's kind of what our flagship event is. But outside of that, what we try to do with the community is just kind of, advocate for more interest in the space, as well as, just provide an area or a group or a social gathering for, other people who are interested in this type of stuff. So, share their ideas, ask for feedback and things of that nature. So that's what the JGDS in a nutshell is, really. And
Wow.
yeah,
JGDS. So you mentioned bringing children in as well there. So there's a high educational aspect of gaming. And sometimes growing up in the Caribbean, when you hear gaming, it's not for education, but really there is, and maybe it's a good opportunity for us to maybe it's being reframed already.
In the higher academia spaces, it is already being reframed. I think Michelle and I had a discussion about this recently. I have opinions around the topic because I think there is value in just play for play's sake, right?
Well, tell us what your opinions are.
Yeah.
No, but I think video games by themselves.
Trying to be self-proclaimed loudmouth, they're holding back, eh? Let's
Yeah, you gotta say. You're in the living room. It's just us.
So
we don't play.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, I don't think people play enough.
Yeah.
Realistically, I think that just video games, just as a de-stressor, just as a little avenue for you to experience mastery. Like you're learning a new set of rules and you're getting good at them, and you're getting that dopamine hit, that self-confidence boost. That has value. Not every game has to be like Math Blaster and teach you mathematics and arithmetic, right?
True.
But I was also talking to an acquaintance of mine, and he was pointing out the what's the term? He was pointing out the incidental learning that happens with games as well. And I'm not sure how factual this is, but this popped up on Reddit where a person, they're on some kind of trip and went to Europe, and he's there with his group, and he was able to navigate this city. I think it was like in Italy or something like that. It turns out he knew where everything was because of his time with Assassin's Creed.
I've heard stories like that. I've heard several stories like that.
Yeah,
and
but
when they talked about education, I didn't just mean having mathematics in the game and so on, but really what you call the incidental learning, the actual engagement with the virtual world that pretty much represents a lot of aspects of the real world, and it's a different type of assimilation and experience. Yeah.
But you can also have that kind of, even if you were doing a game just to play for fun, and if you think about the Caribbean as well, you can still incorporate those elements on the side that are going to help people learn about something as well. I always tell people I probably know more about F1 even though I don't even watch it, but simply from just playing the game. I could, I know how all the different tracks are, how it works. So when you hear it, I learned the rules to NFL football. Not that I really watch it, but I know the rules to it from playing the game. But before that, I never understood the rules, And I think even you look at the region, if you could even in games, you incorporate stuff about geography and where things are, historical things. You can incorporate that in a game where you're getting it without even realizing that you are.
That incidental learning factor is something that really can be harnessed. I'm not sure what the best way of doing that, because one of the things that I feel a game designer is really interested is like this weird mix between a computer scientist and a artist. It's like that mix between creative and tech. So it already feels kind of competing. So to sprinkle in the educator background in there, it's your prerogative if you want. So
so let me give you an idea now for free. I ain't gonna bother. You can patent it. But if you think about something like, say, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? You learn a lot of history.
Yes.
It's one of the most popular games there was back in the day, and probably still is, actually, because I think there's still elements of it in today's modern gaming world as well. But you learn so much about it. Imagine a similar thing, but focused on the region. Right? So you still get the artistry, you still get the game development, And history comes in even without you as a developer thinking about it as well. But now people get that whole education end of it.
No, and here's the part where I'm all for that, but here's the part where I'm gonna challenge you a bit.
Challenge me, man. Nisa, you wake him up, man. Nisa, you wake him up.
Bring him out.
Yeah, man. The developer has to be thinking about that geographical part. It's not just somebody designed it and you worked it and you're just pushing things together. You're actively thinking about the purpose about it. You're actually thinking about the player's perspective while playing it. So there's a lot of intention behind how you design a game.
Of course.
So when you just say, "Oh, you can add education," it is it's not as simple as that. Which is, I think, what I'm trying to articulate.
Would you? Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. And Michelle, do you see a lot of opportunities in this area within our Caribbean sphere?
Absolutely. I mean, with regard to gaming, sure, because clearly there are the skills and there are so many young people, teenagers and so on, who are coming up and have really the opportunities in terms of work may not necessarily be there for them. There's also the prospect of the extent to which one can outsource. If you have technical expertise that is resident in the region, what is to say that a major gaming company or even our, local and regional gamers cannot sort of develop their own teams that can help to develop the games. And I think one of the things, even with Glenn, and it came out, I think, in our own conversation, a few weeks ago, is and going to his point whereby you have, when you're thinking of a game, you think of it holistically. You don't just tack on something. But I think that we think of gaming just as the sort of developer, the person who's going to sit down and write the code. But then, you really need teams and people who can, I mean, yes, an individual can build a game and probably build a very decent game, but depending on what you want, you may need from, conceptualization to have diverse expertise. So, I think sometimes even for us in the region, when we think about, let's say a teacher, but could this person be part of a team that is developing, educational, focused games?
Yeah.
And you think of it from your graphic designer and those who are probably looking at child psychology or something. These people could all be brought in as team members. So I think that we probably in the region need to think more critically and more intentionally about skills that we're developing, because here it is that we're telling everybody how they need to code, but code for what?
Yeah,
exactly.
Where the opportunities?
Exactly. Where's it going to lead me after I done capture and learn all this? Unless we want to ship them out to Silicon Valley or someplace like that, So I think we need to not necessarily just think of things in discrete forms, but a little bit more holistically moving forward.
Also comes back to people that
Michelle's point.
So go ahead, Lisa.
Andre. I was just going to say, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity as well for Caribbean people to tell Caribbean stories. So, for example, that example that was just shared about somebody knowing their way around Italy, it's a great example for other people, not just other Caribbean people, but foreigners, the tourists, to really get to know our islands, our spaces. So let's say there's a GTA, but it takes place in across the various islands, that kind of thing. You have the opportunity.
I love it.
To really show that we're more than just coconuts, dreadlocks, and weed, but there's so much more that you can showcase.
And you gotta walk up in there, coconut, dreadlock, weeds, and walk up.
Why?
You gotta put
there's a real opportunity to not just teach our own people, but teach others as well. I mean, I know so many parents that especially now when their kids are doing a whole lot of nothing and doing it inside, all of a sudden you have these young kids in their formative years, and all of a sudden they have an accent like Peppa Pig, or they, have some sort of, strange American affectation. But that's because they're not seeing themselves whether it is in
100%.
their games,
Absolutely.
in cartoons or whatever it is. So I think it's even more than just the kind of technical development, and it is it's a culture. It can be an important cultural reset as well.
Agree. But one of the things that Michelle said as well that's really clear, because when you're over here in the UK, and not to compare the two directly, but it's almost as if sometimes people with other skills are directed towards tech in order to get that broad thinking, as Michelle was just saying. It takes teams. So it's not just the quote unquote techie, the guy who went to school, who nerded out on games, went to university, did computer science, all that kind of stuff, who went into tech. But here, very often, when you look at the job board, they're asking for historians, Spanish speakers, all kinds of stuff to come into tech. And I think that's when you get that broad depth of,
Absolutely.
what can be applied. As Nisa was just saying, tell our stories. If a historian goes into tech, he might come at it very different and say, but why don't we tell our stories? And now he has the tools to code it and do it as well, or to get alongside other people to do it. So I firmly believe that that's the way how we should look at it. You were going to say, Michelle, sorry.
Sorry, who?
No, go ahead.
No, Michelle.
Okay, I wanted to really just highlight something based on what Nisa was saying about the stories, and in so many different ways. And it came up a lot when I had a discussion with some guys. Well, I want to say out of Montreal. Many of them are actually in the UK studying, and so because they're quite young, but they had developed this virtual reality experience of old Plymouth, if you remember Plymouth Montserrat, before the volcano.
Yeah.
So before that, Plymouth was the capital of Montserrat. There was this volcano in the mid-90s that I think at least a third of the island is now
evacuate. Yeah.
Exactly. So they got footage and primarily photographs because of how long that was, and created this virtual reality experience. So we are talking about it, and just the historical significance, people who would have been, because I think basically almost all of the actual guys who were involved in developing this experience, this virtual reality experience, were born after
the event.
After the event.
Yeah.
And for those who were, they were probably like 1 or 2 years old. So, so they had been like relying on people's memories and whatever architectural drawings, etc. But just a point though, that about, I think we in the region really don't put as much, value on our history and our own experiences. So, talking about colonial times and so on. And, as much as, history is not my, my wheelhouse, but, I think I am a passionate Caribbean person. And the fact that I think that we have unique stories to tell. I mean, coming from slavery all the way to today, and so many of the things that we take for granted. So to the extent that, the whole focus on the orange economy and creative industries and so on, I certainly think that we could be doing more and leveraging that a lot more through technology.
I was gonna address that. Oh, go on, Glenn.
I definitely agree with Michelle there. Like, I feel that there is an opportunity to kind of have this weird cultural anthropology movement, especially with tech. But Andre, you brought up a point about in the UK, software development really, or tech really, looking for more diverse experiences to inform what they're working on. That is definitely tied into for the wider gaming industry. There are a bunch of initiatives that are specifically geared right now to getting more diverse voices. So the LGBT,
tell us about them, because
so a number of them popped up in response to the BLM, Black Lives Matter movement last year. A bunch of funds popped up. I've been trying to encourage Caribbean people to also apply for that, because we ourselves are a minority background in this space. I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember a couple of them from the UK specifically. Can't recall them right now. There was a recent one from the International Game Developer Association. It closes March 21st, called the Game Diversification Fund or something like that. That's specifically looking at different monetization methods and looking for to highlight voices that don't necessarily have that much play. And the reason for that is, like you mentioned, trying to get that diverse scope of opinion on what we're working on. And I think in pointing that out and you talking about that, it kind of solidifies what I was trying to capture earlier when I was speaking about education. We have a habit of looking at games in this box, like it's play. Like, it's just fun.
100% agree.
And we shouldn't consider it in a serious way. It's not important. We don't need it. I mean, if you still play games after 20, there is a very real
concern
still in Jamaica.
Some guys loving to hear you say this now and going saying, "See,
tell you so ever since."
I'm learning playing Call of Duty. Look, I'm learning. Someone break any house, I can slice them up. Yeah.
So yeah, like there is that entire mindset. I feel like we need to shift because it also kind of shifts how we look at other tech industries. I think Mr. can really, like, I know you hate the word pivot.
I know at this point it's just one of those overused words.
That's the word of the season.
I love it.
Yeah, I know, but like that entire mindset that you have to adopt in terms of looking at a problem and how you solve it. That's what I think gaming really taps into in general.
So let's dig into that whole attitudes and behaviors, actually, because that's really interesting, because we come from a culture where, as you rightfully said, if you're still playing games at 22, 23, what's wrong with you, man? You know? But there needs to be a significant shift in our parenting, because, you know, we have to look at how we are saying to our young people, this is important to you, you can learn a lot from it, as opposed to saying, put that down and go and find a book to read. You know, and that is part of the culture. It's the truth. It's part of the cultural shift that we've got to go on, isn't it? Isn't it right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100% there, because you know. You're going to say, Philip?
I was just going to add to that the earlier point we were talking about, people coming in and diversity and so on. There's also the notion of participative design. So even Mark, as you're talking there about a shift in culture, technology is changing. You know, it is becoming a lot more accessible. The industry is changing. It's becoming a lot more accessible. The methods that I can say that we use to get from problem to solution are changing, you know, and participative design is really about inviting the community in. So it's not just about looking for people with specialist skills to come in. It's really looking about the community to come in, because the only way a solution is gonna work is if it has three things. One, has to be desirable. If people don't want it, who cares? Why build it? It has to be feasible. You know, the technology or the emerging technology has to be in place.
Here comes the framework.
To run. And then thirdly, it has to be viable. You have to be able to you have to be able to sustain it as a business. You know, you know, if you build something and you don't have the underlying infrastructure or the funds to keep it going, or the people power in place to keep it going, and the sort of resilience to recover from, you know, if you go into a deficit but you have a greater vision, then, you know, there's a lot of questions to be asked about why are we doing this.
Agreed. I agree with that. On the point though of as well of attitudes and our attitudes towards, say, things like gaming and that kind of thing, I think there's a whole attitudinal shift that got to change. Not just gaming. I mean, we see it across the societies across the region, where we believe education is in a formal, institutionalized setting, and anything else outside of that is hobby or a waste of time, or holding you back from really going and do some work. Kind of stuff. Extracurricular is a big word. I just talking about how the parents would be talking, right? The parents don't say extracurricular. They tell you, hey, stop wasting your time and go and find something useful to do. So, you know, so the whole attitudes really, really need to change. And I think when those attitudes start to change, we will start to see a shift. I think in what comes out from our teams, whether it be in tech or media and what's not, because a lot of learning is done outside the normal institutional setting. You know, I always say I know more about United States through watching television, and not documentaries or news, but watching, you know, Friends and all kind of different things. Or as a perception, I say I know more, but the perception of what United States or different places are, I know through watching those things or playing games and what's not. But don't seem to be there in that understanding as yet in the region.
This comment on the screen is true. Glenn.
I mean, I can't say no right now, right?
Well, you know what I think is interesting, guys, is I think this COVID period, literally the last year, has kind of also forced us to relook. Look at essential workers. You know, the some of the jobs that parents would have traditionally kind of turn up their noses at, etc. Now these are the people that the last year has proven, they're saving us, and that also includes people who are in the media, in tech, because as you so for example, we have Ministry of Health press conferences 3 days a week now. And at this point, I can safely say I no longer look at them. But what I would look at is the graphics that are done, any,
dashboards.
The dashboards, any kind of, these, short form videos that kind of, have the data encapsulated in it, but it's not sitting down looking at, an hour-long, 2-hour-long press conference. So it's really interesting that, you have these different alternative jobs or alternative paths, but in the last year, it's absolutely proven invaluable. And as you said, Andre, they're saving us. In terms of vaccine communication, and I know there's this constant. There's a website I think called COVID Tracker where it's this graphic, this kind of moving graphic that tells you the status of COVID cases around the world. There's a new one, a vaccine tracker, and all of that is deeply rooted in tech.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I also wanted to just comment on what Andre was saying, because I think, and again, probably due to COVID-19 and remote learning and e-learning, we've been talking about it for so long in the region, probably a good 10, maybe even 15 years by now. And what would happen and what has happened, and I think, is it what one would call the chalk and talk, even online, that the teacher wants to be able to, just talk to the students and tell them to open up their books and so on. But the whole engagement and the effectiveness of that sort of, pedagogical approach is a challenge, and I think they realized was not effective. So what you now have is that teachers now are required to spend a lot more time to develop more interactive material for their classes. And the fact of the matter is, because you have how many students, the classrooms relatively is still quite large, all things being considered. So you may have if you have all of your students in online, you might have 30 students. How you gonna keep on top of them? If you're in the classroom, maybe if somebody getting bored or start to fidget or something, you might be able to see them and have something address it right away. So the whole, I think, approach probably may lend itself to, I guess, a more open approach and considered approach for I don't necessarily want to say gaming, but just the fact that you need to have material that is more more engaging.
A different way of engaging. Different way of engaging.
It's change and transition, isn't it? Because I've heard so many teachers across the region say how tired and frustrated they are. But when I observe that, I think a lot of that is due to the fact that the way they're delivering isn't quite the way that you should deliver in a digital space. So they're trying really hard to make their offline content work, but not really utilizing the full suite of tools that could enable that fully. So I do take that point, Michelle, about how we're teaching and how we need to transition. And there's going to be a really, I suppose, a deep conversation across education ministries in the region about how do we change. How do we change?
And the kids are adapting faster than the
teacher. Absolutely.
So my sister is a teacher, and she always has these crazy stories of these kids are just learning so quickly how to beat the system. So they would log in. So you can't say they didn't come to class, but they would either put up an away message, whatever. They're really just figuring out how to beat the system. There was one funny story the other day. This girl didn't do her homework, and for the whole class, she pretended her screen was frozen. So these kids, they're beating these systems. So really the adults have two things to do. One, figure out how to really deliver, adapt, and deliver online content, because it's but not in a classroom, and we don't have that physicality. You don't have eyes all over where, as Michelle said, you kind of see one fidgeting and you could immediately turn around and, kind of see what's going on. So we have to figure out how to adapt that content. And two, figure out how to catch up with these kids, because they are a tech generation. So if we don't keep up with them, I mean, they're going to outclass all of us.
I wonder how much of that difficulty really is, though, a shift away from, I guess in the classroom setting, it's more of the teacher talking at the students, but on a digital setup, it's more a participatory, collaborative conversation. Because I'm pretty sure everyone here who has to be doing work from home is very sick of meetings right now. Not one person. As opposed to how everyone here is talking and engaging each other. We have a meeting for 30 minutes and there's one person presenting and everybody else is muted, cameras off, so you might as well just be talking at a board. That means that information is not being transferred. So you need to develop these practices and these methods where you are encourage active participation, active listening, checking in, and doing that. And it's really just highlighting the holes in the system, to my knowledge, because those are the same students who would sleep. I mean, I'd be one of them drawing in the back of my book.
And you're looking like you're taking notes, right?
You look like you're taking notes. You're drawing Dragon Ball Z characters somewhere in the back of your book.
I so recognize that, man.
I know. But even real in our own experience, I mean, it is us doing this show right now, as well as showing how to be different in utilizing tech and in delivering information in a different way depending on the platform that you're using. Because someone might look at this and say, hey, this is not good for quote unquote television. And we always have to tell people, but we ain't doing TV.
We ain't doing it for TV. Who cares?
Just because you see people on the screen talking, our perception is it has to be TV and TV ready and of a certain and packaged a certain way and done a certain way. And we just got to keep we ain't doing TV.
Yeah, I think Versus showed us that. The whole Versus phenomenon with, what would have been live shows.
Exactly.
I don't. That's certainly not packaged for TV because they just don't stop. Like there are no ad breaks, and you can't stop.
No,
imagine. I mean, I'm assuming you all watch the greatest battle ever, Beanie Bounty. But imagine stopping.
I thought you were going to say Addison and thing, man.
No.
I thought you said Addison and Destra. Not Destra, sorry.
But can you imagine stopping that at any point in that? I mean, that was 2-3 hours. I don't even know at this point of grief. Like we would have missed things like, the policeman knocking at the door and all of this stuff. And then that began to break, records, streaming records all over. And it's just a different format. Yeah. And that developed in the last year.
And even as good as that was, what did you find yourself doing while it was happening?
Reading the chat.
We don't want to know.
Reading the chat. No, not the dancing. I mean, again, personal. But no, what Michelle said, reading the chat, which is the engagement. Right?
Yeah.
Which is
because we were looking at the comments, looking to see who was in on it.
Who's in, who's commenting. Exactly.
It was fantastic. And it's a different level of engagement, as you were saying, Andre. And I think you, Mark, said it as well. It's a completely different kind of engagement because now, talking strictly from this kind of Versus platform, it kind of humanizes and closes a distance between like them and us. So now we're like, we know we're enjoying it, but we're seeing celebrities and people that we would have never heard from in such an intimate setting. Now we're hearing, how they're feeling and, Usain Bolt with all these, flame emojis coming across and they feel what we feel, so it really does kind of close that gap. So it's really interesting that yes, there's a physical distance that COVID has created, but then you have this digital gap that's closing as well.
Absolutely.
But I wonder if I could
go ahead, Phil.
Go on, Mark.
You go ahead.
I saw a comment come up by Anastasia earlier, just which was talking about the baby steps towards digitizing everyday services and so on, which again in this COVID period, it would have served us well if a lot of that stuff was already digital.
Right.
But as I was thinking about that, I think one of the things we have to recognize is, sorry, at least I could speak from the perspective of Barbados back in the 80s, 90s. Our engagement with tech, there was a lot of data entry, right? A lot of our offshore was data entry. And what we were doing, we were actually enabling larger economies to become digital by doing this sort of back end work. Now, the challenge is, who does that work, right? Where do we get the sort of people power to do that manual labor of converting paper-based files into digital format as well. You know, there's still a lot of human labor that is required. And again, it does come down to that question of affordability. And the reason that was outsourced to us back in the 80s and 90s is because we were affordable. We were making it cheap. Affordable for their economy. Cheap, yes, is the term. No, we have to look at, if we want to transition our digital experience as well, how are we going to go about it? Who is going to do that sort of work? Are we just going to take the hit and do that, or are we going to say, well, it's an expensive undertaking and just do it?
I don't think we got a choice but to take the hit, though.
Yeah, we don't really.
I don't think there's a choice. But even within that sphere, when you say take the hit, the assumption is that someone is spending money and there's no return coming back. But if an independent company is created, as was the case, say, in Barbados and across the region, to do that data entry for a company, likewise can happen across the region. And then there's employment, there's taxes being paid, there's a whole lot that's keeping the economy rolling, as well as the prize at the end, which will put us in good stead to go forward in a digitized manner. So I think it won't be just taking the hit. There's a little bit more that can happen there. There's I
was going to say that, where there's a will, there's a way. But I think as much as there is going to be that, practical situation that would need to be addressed. Are we there yet? In the sense that, are we at a point where we think that it is sufficiently important that we are prepared to, move heaven and earth to make it happen? And I'm not sure that we are, because
a crisis.
No.
Well, I mean, we in the throes of a crisis, and granted
exactly.
that clearly, there may be other imperatives, but I think, we've been talking about, for example, something like e-government for at least a decade now, and now we talk about, joined up government, and we talk about all, so it's like every so often we get a new phrase or a new term that means the same thing. And you now say, but I mean, we have been talking about it for 10 years now. If you want to be saying, oh, well, now we're looking at joined up government, but what is it different from where we were? So the question is whether or not there is the political imperative to do so. And the fact, I think, that so much of our major projects and initiatives are considered from a political perspective. We don't necessarily do 20-year, 30-year national plans, develop sustainable.
Language now.
Yeah, so the point just being, though, that it's only from the political manifestos that you get the sense what the government is going to do, and typically that is for the next 5 years or whatever might be the term. And then now, one of the things that in the same way that Nisa talks about, pivot being overused, the term quick wins, has me rolling my eyes most of the time,
right.
because we focus so much on quick wins and we never look at, sometimes the deeper work that needs to be done that will really, move us forward, but it's going to take, longer.
So I'm sure if you work more agile, you could get those quick wins even when you pivot.
You just used two buzzwords a while ago, and trigger. Sorry for cutting you off a little bit earlier, Andre. I just that the entire topic here. I just want to say that the hit that we would have to take in terms of digitizing stuff like that is many factors less than it would have been in the 90s and 80s. Big data is a thing,
exactly,
right? Like Michelle mentioned, it's really up to the will. One of the low-hanging fruit that I'm pretty sure any software developer that
Low
is
hanging
in the
fruit.
Caribbean,
Yes.
But one of the things that come to mind is just thinking of the police system here in Jamaica. We still operate out of that big book, even though multiple solutions have been developed and deployed for it, right? But for some reason, they just are not adopted. Even though I'm not sure the veracity of this one, but even the vaccine rollout right now in the Caribbean, they're using books, is what I'm hearing according to social
Cards,
media.
Right?
That makes no sense to me at all. Like, why?
So that brings us to a really interesting point that I want to raise with Nisa, actually, about institutional barriers, because when we are talking about the adoption of new technologies, you dreamt big and you went for it. Tell us about some of the institutional barriers that actually got in the way, because this is where this conversation is really going.
God,
things that are stopping us.
How much time we have?
Probably not.
Okay, so it's easy to kind of look at the success story thus far that is Move, in terms of bringing this cool thing down to the Caribbean, blah blah blah. Little known fact, I honestly kind of had to close my eyes and take a chance, because I was given no assurances from the regulatory bodies before bringing it that it would be licensed in the first place. So I quite honestly, I could have had this vehicle just sitting down, because I just got I tried. I really tried quite hard to get some feedback before I made the investment. But when I realized after months that it was a no-go, I kind of just had to, bite the bullet and really, really hope. Don't think that's the best case scenario for most businesses in terms of operating in this kind of wing of a prayer situation. But I felt like I couldn't understand why, on one hand, you were talking about diversification and going green and all these things, and on the other hand, I could barely get a response from regulatory bodies. And it got here in March last year, literally a year ago. And then, COVID did happen. COVID was responsible for a lot of the delays because the licensing body was unexpectedly closed. They actually thought that they were going to be one of those essential services, but they were not. But when they did open, oh my goodness, it was this hamster wheel of letters and quite a lot of more money being spent to take this thing down to the licensing office. And of course I can't drive it because it's not licensed. So every time I have to put it up on a flatbed. It really was a lot, Wow. And I was in the fortunate position that I was able to afford it, well, at the time. but without that kind of investment, it really would not have happened. And I know that is a story for many businesses in the Caribbean, and a lot that are centered around tech. So I hear you guys talking about digitization of records and all of that, which is great and essential. And in fact, with the re-election of the last government in August, they actually created a new ministry, and that is their sole focus, digitization, which sounds great. And this is probably where I kind of make my most and only controversial statement for this living room talk.
No, be controversial.
I think that I still don't think that puts us more ahead than anybody else. Because we are simply catching up, as you said, Philip, people were digitizing in the 80s and 90s, and we are, as Caribbean people in 2021, talking about moving away from books, from physical records, and we're not talking about things like real integration of tech into everyday lives. So, things like using Bitcoin, using, online, payment portals for government services. So we do have, for example, an online platform for government services, right? But here's the kicker: you have to go in person to register for it.
So you got to go in person to register for online
a digital service.
Correct. You absolutely
Lord have
to go in
mercy.
person. Yeah, because I went on reality. When I wanted to register this business move. Of course, it's in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm like, okay, great. I'm just going to do everything online, and I couldn't because that office was closed, and I have to physically go in to do it. Yes, I am all for the digitization of our records, but I also think we are 2 decades behind in terms of really advancing and progressing and really showing ourselves on the on the global stage as a real player, as a Caribbean, as the entire Caribbean.
So I was going to ask Michelle, looking at the stuff that Nisa's talking about there of these barriers and how irrational they seem. ICT Pulse, you have this space where you write a lot about challenges in the Caribbean and so on.
Right.
Are you intentionally trying to change the narrative and change some of the challenges in your own way in that editorial?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and it goes back to something, I think whether or not it was said earlier or on our pre-call or something, where we talk about the region just being consumers of technology. We don't necessarily develop it. And one thing that I'm very passionate about, and probably was one of the key elements in me launching ICT Pulse 10 years ago, is the fact that we as Caribbean people, especially in terms of global issues, don't recognize the fact that we have a certain amount of power, in the sense that we, let's say on issues such as internet governance, we are, sovereign states. We are members of the United Nations. We are members of the International Telecommunications Union. We are members of many global bodies that are dealing with these issues. And as tiny as we are, we have one vote like everybody else. And to the extent that we understand the technology, we understand the issues and what might be our own interests, how then can we express that globally and ensure that our issues are being considered in the global conversations that we are having? So, one of the things that, at least certainly on ICT Pulse, that I'm continually trying to do is to get us to just think a little bit more about the issues, and not necessarily just, 5G. Oh, we want 5G. Okay, you want it, but what does that mean?
What are the applications for it? Yeah.
What are the applications? What are the infrastructural changes that need to be made? How is that going to affect the providers who are all privately owned, and they're looking at returns on investments and the like? So, I think that there's so many issues that we just need to discuss. And that's what I really try to do in ICT Pulse.
You also mentioned something really, really key there for me that touched me quite a bit. There is not just consumers, but also contributors, but even a higher level is influencers. We are actually in a position to influence tech as well. And tech
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Glenn, you were talking. Go on, Lisa. Go on.
No, I was going to just kind of piggybacking off what we both were saying, actually, especially Michelle, in terms of our global positioning and kind of being a power player if we can. So one of the positive things about Brexit for us is that, now the UK is, it was one of the predictions of it, and I've seen it starting to happen already in terms of the UK kind of looking to...
That's the first time that term has been used on this show. Wow.
What, Brexit? on a UK-based show?
For a long time.
One of the things is that Britain is now looking, to alternative sources of, for many different things. So, for example, there's an article that came out locally yesterday. Yesterday, or either yesterday or Friday. Anyway, and it was the announcement of a program between the UK and Trinidad and Tobago where much like it was many years ago with that working holiday visa, that locals can now go to the UK for 6 months and work for 6 months, not just visit, but work in, I think it's 29 different sectors. And that came out of, this dearth being created or having been created by Brexit, and many, Europeans who lived in the UK, their decision to pull out and to, either go to their respective homes or literally anywhere else in the UK. So I see that as an opportunity as well to, let's say, this happens with every, Caribbean country. This is quite possibly an avenue for tech, because it's a way to, begin exporting that talent to the UK, development of that talent, and really showcasing what, Caribbean people can do here. So I saw that program and I was like, oh my goodness, this could be big.
Let's do a swap.
A lot of different sectors.
Indeed. One of the things that is really intriguing me at the moment as well is that I've always been one to feel that it's really business and creative people who often drive change, even at a policy level and a governmental level and what's not. And I'm looking at you, Nisa, and I'm saying, okay, your business is driving a change within Trinidad and Tobago. I'm sure now that they're probably going to look at infrastructure and what's not as you, branch into tourism and your fleet grows and what's not, the ease of doing business. Do you guys feel as if the business community is driving technology or the direction of technology as much as they should in the region, or are they just using what's there to make them money, so to speak, because they're happy? Because I see Nisa as one of those people now that's driving creative business. She's driving that perspective.
Literally.
True. Literally. Yes, literally.
I don't know about the, I could speak to some extent for Trinidad. And again, I kind of would be the first one to hold my hand up and say, listen, I am the least techie, least qualified person to talk
that's
about.
That's all right.
Yeah.
But what I do see happening, years and years ago, and again, probably controversial, but years and years ago, a very dear friend did tell me that, do not look to any government agency for innovation. It has to come, and it will come from the private sector.
Exactly.
Which I think we can all say that has proven itself to be true. And there are very few strictly government-led initiatives that have not been driven by either public sector, kind of, you send a proposal and you're kind of pushing for this thing to make sense, and eventually a government kind of bites. A lot of times, unfortunately, they don't. And with that comes a lot of frustration, and a lot of people either just give up and begin to or continue working in the existing system, or they export their talent and their ideas in other markets that allow them to use whatever technologies that they want or they're trying to introduce. One example is WePay, that was founded and based in Trinidad and Tobago, but they have decided to leave Trinidad as their base, and they are looking to Barbados and Jamaica because the tech environment is more open to the kind of technologies that they are trying to introduce. And I know that it was a tough decision for the Trinidadian founder, but this is also because this was after months and years of knocking at regulators' doors and just being met with no. So yes, I do think that the private sector is the one kind of driving these things, in as much as is, and as much as is humanly possible. I do think we try to include and involve and really try to amalgamate the governments, respective governments. This is certainly not me beating up on my own government, but more of a general statement. I do think we do try, and where we do succeed, great. But there are lots of times where we kind of just have to push on and do it on our own. And sometimes, I mean, again, like me, it kind of took a risk, and I could have.
Be brave.
I think the private sector, if nothing else, is certainly more risk prone than the government sector, which is, if you take too big of a risk, you could get ousted in the next election.
I would kind of challenge that a little bit, mainly from my experience of working in traffic highways and transport in the UK. And what I see working there very effectively is a mature model that allows the private sector and departments to come alongside and birth things, pilot things, test things, and roll them out in future. And I think sometimes we don't recognize that actually there's a hell of a lot of public money that goes in behind some of these projects that are, become a thing down the road. But in truth, unless you have a model of governance that allows that maturity, that allows the private sector, allows the governmental organizations to come together and work on something to solve it, it's always a competition. And it always seems as though the private sector is doing this or the public sector is doing that. You have to get to a more mature place. So I think there's a better governance model that needs to emerge in our Caribbean society around that. For sure.
The other point you made there, Mark, it's not competition between private and public, or it shouldn't be a competition. It should be more collaboration. But one thing you mentioned there, Nisa, is we pay moving out of Trinidad into Barbados and Jamaica, suggesting that there's not a homogenous sort of tech environment.
No.
Correct.
Which
absolutely.
Maybe that's not expected. But
I'm surprised at that, actually. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, what are the... Yeah, Michelle, you probably had some...
Yes, I wanted to just say, because, the private sector, at least in Jamaica, and I guess Glenn can share his own perspective. My observation is that in Jamaica, what you may find is that there's almost as if there's sort of two branches of the private sector. You have probably the larger corporates that have deep resources, and they can follow the government processes as they might see fit. They also they may have a presence internationally, so that if by chance the systems in Jamaica do not facilitate what they want to do, they can use their operations elsewhere, leverage their operations elsewhere to get things done. But for maybe medium, small, micro businesses who do not have those kinds of resources, so you may find that either your idea cannot be fully manifested in the way that you want, and what also may happen is that people are just using a lot of workarounds. So, for example, a lot of Jamaicans, and I'll say it like this, who may have studied in college, studied at colleges in the US, they have like social security numbers. They would have set up bank accounts so they can access, for example, the PayPal and the online payment systems overseas that they then use, to support their businesses and their ventures. So I like, for example, and I mean, again, one of my passion projects is, the whole e-commerce, services, and the fact that it's very expensive and difficult to get, e-commerce platforms and services, online merchant services here in the region. And I guess Jamaica, for example, and, especially for digital businesses, the way how the system is usually establishing at the commercial banks is that, they have this reams of requirements, and they want to see, or the business plan and so on. But you need to have revenues of a certain threshold, and then they want to be able to interrogate the security system of what you're doing. So there's they expect that you, as a micro or small business, have this major team behind you that they can engage. And the fact of the matter is that you may be a one person thing. It's a digital platform, and the way how it is considered online services is that you're a brick and mortar store, or that wants to add that on to what you're doing, and that is not the case. So therefore, here it is that we do have services like We Pay here in Jamaica and others that are coming through, but they may still be a bit expensive. They're still challenging in various ways. And I don't get the sense that the government recognizes the imperative behind solving some of those problems and issues because of, how there's a big talk about wealth creation and innovation and so on. But if people can't get paid, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to pick up Michelle's point there, and also to kind of add a modifier to Nissa's controversial statement, I would say that innovation doesn't necessarily come from the private sector as a whole. I would say that it probably comes from the micro and small businesses. That's where the innovation is really going to come from. The private companies that are established and are large, they already have the resources, like Michelle pointed out. They can work around the system if needs be. What is stifled are the small people, the small businesses, the solo entrepreneurs, those people who are trying to take advantage of the economies of scale that tech has allowed, specifically like e-commerce and stuff like that. We in the Caribbean are still hampered by that. We have not been, we've heard of stories of places abroad. We've heard somebody opening an Etsy shop and, selling trinkets on the side while they did their job, and then a year later, they can now do that full time. I'm not confident there's that many stories of something similar like that in the Caribbean. And it's not for a lack of skill. It's not for a lack of knowledge. It is literally because you can't get the money out of PayPal. Like that is the fence for a lot of these people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes no sense to me. Even for my own ventures, I had to find all of these avenues to kind of get paid, right?
Wow.
And these are automated systems. I can get one of my platforms that I end up selling my projects through, Steam. I get statements from them every month, easy. I haven't interacted with a person. I can set up, I can do my taxes, I can sign everything, right? It's only through some in-depth research that I found a service that allows me to get paid. But even then, it's not necessarily into my NCB account, my local bank account. Like, why?
Yeah. And we often lay these questions very bare here in the living room at the people who lead our countries, because these are the kind of conversations. When you tell me you can't connect a PayPal account to a bank account in the Caribbean, I'm like, but why not?
Yeah.
PayPal been around for about 20 plus years now almost. What's the problem? And it just feels like some of these things are so easy to do, but why are we not doing them?
Some of it's... Nisa, you want to go ahead?
Michelle? No,
okay. I mean, some of it has to do with, from what I understand, this whole correspondent banking and money laundering and what, our countries considered high risk by developed countries. And it's those sorts of things. So, I mean, my controversial statement is that this might be the 21st century brand of colonialism all over again.
Yeah,
so
e-commerce imperialism.
By the way, you're allowed more than one controversial statement.
But even to show how it hampers in industries, actually, because it's a good thing that what was being said there just now about being able to get money out of PayPal and what's not. One of the recent developments that's happened is, and this is simple, might seem a bit off, but is Spotify allowing the Caribbean to access it from the Caribbean, right? Now, for me, that's big. I dabble in a little bit of music here and there, but that's big. And the reason why it's big for me is that Spotify is a much better channel of income than YouTube, to be honest with you. If you've got your money, depending on where you got your music, Spotify is a much better channel. But for the entire period, our artists weren't able to channel their audience to Spotify to listen to their music and what's not.
Get the money out.
Glenn is itching to say something.
There's nuance there, because I'm pretty confident that our artists were putting
not getting the music. No, not getting the music on Spotify. Lots of music is on Spotify. What I mean is then the Caribbean audience to access that music via Spotify, which is a platform that actually pays better than other platforms, i.e. YouTube, where people are listening and what's not. So that's where even an industry like the entertainment industry was losing out because of that linkage not being there. But now it is there. Now artists can actually channel people to that to that platform.
I'm not sure about the backend for Spotify, but I'm going to hope that they at least allow wire transfer.
Well, you can use you can use something else, TuneCore or what's not. I won't go into all that, but there's another way that you can get paid. But what I mean is that the audience couldn't access the platform, a platform that would have actually allowed them to have higher revenues than they are currently or were having prior to that time. So that's where it actually also becomes real, as it is for you as a developer. It is real even for other industries as well, where technology is not being used as it should be or could be across the region.
Because their predominant audience is from the Caribbean. If you're a Caribbean artist,
quite
often your big audience is in the Caribbean. So
yeah, but YouTube views don't pay nothing. Trust me,
nothing.
No, they don't.
YouTube views don't pay one thing, but Spotify listens do. Trust me.
To add to that though, just for context, I think Google, it wasn't in like 2018 that they listed Jamaica as a merchant. So if you were an app developer for Google and tried to put something up, you couldn't get paid. I think you only could put free apps up. You couldn't put paid apps. Okay. So like even things like that, we had the skills, you have the platform, people are using it, but you couldn't get paid. So it's just weird. It feels like arbitrary hurdles.
And these are the obstacles that, if we are going to fully participate in the economies that are here, they're not coming, they are here. Nisa has stepped up with great risk. Glenn, you're stepping up with great risk. Michelle, you're stepping up with great risk. You're expecting a return. It's not good enough for our governments to not be making these standards or pulling these barriers down. We want to participate fully in the economy that is here, not the one that's coming. So
wait, hold on a minute, Mark, because this is interesting. Perhaps Michelle can help me here. From a regional perspective, because to participate fully is going to take more than, let's be honest, Antigua trying to lobby someone to do something may not happen. Dominica, may not happen. People might start to listen to Jamaica. People might start to listen to Trinidad. But from a CARICOM, a regional perspective, how are we working in this technological space? Is it happening or is it not?
Well, let me put something into context for you.
She's getting hot now. She warming up.
She was waiting for that one.
I trust the abbreviation CSME.
Yeah. Yes.
From the 1990s, right? We are not there yet.
Nothing happening.
Well, they would say that, yes, things are happening, but we are not there yet. Because even the Caribbean single ICT space, which is supposed to be, the infrastructural element, the digital layer of CSME to allow us, to trade and the free movement of persons, that has been, considerably delayed over the last 5 years or so. They had put together this digital plan probably around 2014 with the intention that by 2020, we probably will be quite advanced. So I think the only sort of consolation is maybe, as horrible as COVID-19 has been, is that I think it has shown, the leaders that we really need to step up our game as it relates to, getting this digital layer established. So, and one of the things that I think has really challenged CARICOM in particular is the fact that, let's say, I think it has 15 or 16 full member states. Those are the independent countries. But, you go to CARICOM, you have your meetings, they come out with a communique at the end to say, right, and how the commitment of the countries and so on. And then everybody goes back to their respective countries and
business as usual.
So politics, next election.
Exactly. Correct. Exactly. So maybe unlike the OECS, where that entity has more power and therefore can really, I don't want to say force, but really facilitate the implementation of agreed policies in different aspects. That does not happen at the CARICOM level, and so you're continually having various challenges. So that really is where it's at least. I'm hopeful. Every couple of years I have Jennifer Britton from the CARICOM Secretariat. She is, I think, head for ICT for development at CARICOM and very much involved in the single ICT space. So, like earlier this year, I had on the podcast to talk about where we're at, because 2020 came and went, and we're supposed to have achieved so much, and I guess she could not necessarily give us all the good news that we had hoped. So I guess we still continue to hold strain and hope that the region will do what it must.
But that's so important for us, as Mark was saying, to participate in this wider economy around tech
Fully.
for the region to get the act together and work as one, to lobby into pressure and to have a strategic focus as well going forward.
Absolutely. And one other thing, sorry, just to say that, especially from a business perspective, especially for some of our smaller islands, you really cannot look at, let's say, and I mean, if there are any Montserratians in the audience, I'm not picking on you, but the point though is just that with a population of 5,000 or 4,500, there may not be a market for a true market for you to develop products that are viable. So looking at the region is such an important part. Being able to market to the region, being able to look at that as a part of your full business case. It should never necessarily be just your own island, but almost think of the region as a block before whether or not you have aspirations to take your product global.
Indeed.
You're talking our language there.
You're on the right channel here now for that.
Yeah.
Phil, you were going to jump in just now?
Well, I'm looking at the time, and we are moving towards that magic time of 2 hours. But something I wanted us to do as a group, as a family gathered here together.
Aye.
Play a little game.
A board game?
It's called the 6C technology game.
Oh,
right.
Pronounce that again?
6C. Yes.
I just checking.
So all we have to do, right, is there are these 6 C's, and what we're going to do, I was going to play it with the dice, but I'll leave you dice out. I'll leave it up to you to choose challenge or opportunity, right? And what we'll do is we'll step through these 6 C's, and you can either think about your particular business domain, or you can look at this bigger vision of a regional Caribbean ICT environment, and come up with what's a challenge or an opportunity for each of these C's. Okay.
And guys in the audience, we want you actively in this one, right?
Yeah.
So
Indeed.
challenge or opportunity. We ready, Phil?
We ready? Yeah, let's do it.
So let's look at the first one then.
The
First
C is capacity. So this is looking at things like power and energy, data centers and storage, networking and telco, processing and performance. Challenges, opportunities in that space. Go.
I'm noticing I'm not seeing like education or knowledge or anything here.
That comes later.
Oh, okay.
You want to cheat, man? He looking ahead.
Yeah.
take your time, man. Take your time.
Yeah.
Take your time. So
Okay.
go ahead, Michelle.
All right. Yeah. So challenges and opportunities for data centers and storage. Clearly, data centers tend to be very, fuel intensive, energy intensive. Probably, out of maybe Trinidad and Tobago and maybe Ghana, if they're so inclined, may have the resources to really leverage that in a significant way. We also have to consider just the fact that a lot of countries may want to have data centers, stop in their own, sovereign space, but the extent to which, for example, hurricanes can come and just decimate everything, regardless of all of the protections that you have. So so that is definitely a challenge. But I do think that there's an opportunity on a regional perspective, because you do have countries such as Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Curacao, that are outside of the hurricane belt in particular, and who that may be able to better provide those sorts of services and facilities at what might be a cost-effective and more competitive rate. So that may be something that we could consider, but that really needs a regional approach, and the fact that we cannot afford to be as insular as we have been going forward.
Fantastic.
So far.
Really, really
Excellent.
good.
That's 2 points to Michelle for the.
All
All right, let's go to the next.
Take this serious, no?
You get the idea now. Okay. Competency. So we're looking at competencies in data, whether that's analytics, competencies in design, in software development or hardware development, and also delivery. So who's going to take that challenge and opportunity?
Okay, so I think there is definitely a challenge in how we, again, the Caribbean thinks about design and development specifically. We kind of touched on it earlier when we were thinking about, what solutions we are building and why we're building them, right? Design really is looking at, how you can do that elegantly and to try and, satisfy an end user. And development touches on the education to achieve that end, right? I'm pretty confident that we have the skills internally, right? But I think there is an opportunity to really showcase that, meaning it's there, knowledge is there, the skills are there, it's to tap into it in a stronger fashion. And I think that really lies in that delivery option, right? So it's really up to our tech community to kind of get that business savvy, that production knowledge, that way of selling, a little bit of that grit that Nissa has, and just trying to translate that over into our community a bit more. Because I think the push for coding has worked, like education and getting into the coding sector, that has worked. But just in terms of, what are you building and why are you building it and what you hope to achieve, that needs to be answered. And we need to have that business hat screwed on real tight.
Okay.
Right. I was going to say, again, this is definitely you guys' kind of wheelhouse versus mine. So I guess from the non-techie perspective, I see this one as, certainly as an opportunity, as Glenn said, and I completely agree that we check all of these boxes in terms of we absolutely have the talent, the know-how, and again, it's a way to develop tech for the Caribbean and for our unique purposes, and our unique just how our things are set up. So, for example, do we really want to solely rely on, let's say, if it's a government agency, do we solely want to rely on tech that has been developed for a European or American or British market that has, for example, vastly different government structures? So I think it's a great opportunity, but I do see the other side that Glenn just mentioned in terms of, it's great. It's like having a football team with the best players in the world, but if you don't have, a strategy and a game play, then you're not going to get that kind of optimum result.
Okay. Next one down.
Perfect.
Can I say something just in terms of competency? One of the things that I am quite, concerned about is the whole area of digital literacy and the extent to which it is not happening in the region. We think that we can, people now, especially for students, tablets in school and COVID and so on. But the whole experience is quite abbreviated when you're looking at with the use of tablets and smartphones and the extent that we are actually preparing, the upcoming generation and even ourselves, because for so many of us that are using technology, we can do the things that we need to do, but we really don't understand the implications therein. So even some of the issues related to, privacy, cybersecurity, and what we can do to better manage and protect ourselves. These are things that we really don't understand. So I recognize that is really a challenge. And I guess the flip side in terms of just the opportunity is the fact that there is the opportunity for so much more to be done on that front, and even for entrepreneurial ventures, I think, to really help to bridge that gap.
Wow.
This is a strong field we have here.
Absolutely.
All right, let's keep going. Let's pick the pace up. Come on,
Creativity.
Pick the pace up.
Let's go. So insight, inspiration, innovation, invention. What are the challenges and opportunities we have for creativity?
I don't think. Have you all seen the memes that come out of Caribbean people? We have to be some of the most all of these things, insightful, creative, inspirational, we are masters of that.
Yeah.
So for example, I see we're so fast. So let's take memes. I see these things generated at lightning speed, and I often think, my gosh, imagine if governments, and again, because so the other side of the NISA pair coin is communication, right? So I do have a public relations consultancy, and I do a lot of kind of corporate and government comms. And sometimes I look at these things and I'm like, wow, if governments, and this is regionally, this is certainly not just Trinidad and Tobago, if we were to kind of grab on to some of these, big meme makers, and because again, we spoke to this point a lot earlier, it's just a new form of communication, fast communication, digital, immediate communication. And if we were to kind of harness that talent that we see every day, and these things go viral, not even in our own countries, if we were to, one, recognize this as a legitimate talent and viable tool, we could do so much more. Because like I said, I don't know, I struggle to think of another region in the world that is as creative, as insightful, and as bloody funny than than the Caribbean. Like we have all of these things, so the opportunity is there, certainly, to take this to the next level. But the challenge is, as we mentioned a lot earlier, is stepping away from, oh God, this person is just funny, to seeing how you can parlay that talent and that skill and that quick manipulation of digital tools into a real business or a real economy.
So the challenge there is monetization.
But it also, because people have found way to monetize it, but I think in real recognition of it as a possible enterprise, a possible
exactly. So that's it. So from the creator's perspective, I find the ability to monetize and actually make a living. Because yes, people, and I think make a living is really the key, a sustainable living in it. Because even when we look at what our most advanced creative industry, music, there's still a lot of people out there living season to season. If you look at the calypso, soca arena and anything, and similarly in Jamaica with reggae and what's not, lots of people living album to album or song to song. And then when they get 60 years old, we all got to hold a benefit concert because no one was making sustainable money to put things in. So I think that's the part from our creative industries of monetization to be sustainable and have a future, a real future.
I think we should bring more and more young people.
Yeah, but
hang on. Just want to say one thing on top of the
hold on that one there, Carbon.
Just want to say one thing about the monetization thing. Yes, we have pound for pound. The Caribbean is like, we knock it out of the park, right? Like we are one of the strongest cultural powerhouses, like globally. Monetization is a problem, but I think part of the reason why monetization is a problem is we don't necessarily value that creativity at home.
Yes, there you go. There you go.
Very, very true.
Very true. So that's why I think initiatives like Kingston Creative, the Orange Economy, that kind of push is important, because that's from an infrastructure level, is trying to educate and enforce the value and the impact that these things can have.
And where you see that is where people might go on Apple Music and buy a tune that's extra regional, but they want to buy the pirate CD for the season that got 50 songs on it for $5.
There is that.
And still try to beat whoever's selling it down.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But they go and buy Coldplay for the price that Apple has.
Easily. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is actually taking us into the fourth C, which is all about getting stuff out. The channels, the production, the getting things onto platforms, actually promoting stuff, and protection. And protection there is, of course, the intellectual property. So again, what are the challenges and opportunities we have?
Okay. All right. So in terms of challenges, I'm sorry if somebody else was going to say something, but just off the top of my head for production, we, from end to end, as practitioners, we generally have an idea of what we want to do. There is this kind of skills gap in terms of team development. outside of industries such as like music. I think we tend to be more solo oriented, even with myself. I tend to be, I tend to kind of shy away from the team effort a bit.
Even as the loudest.
Even as the loudest, right? I tend to shy away from it a bit, but I know that there is definitely value to working with a team, so I'm trying to do more of that. Part of the things that we're trying to do with JGDS is like spotlight talent and opportunities. So I'm just kind of basically showcase the entire pipeline from inception straight through to production, straight through to narrative, to development, and basically just highlight the entire thing straight through. And if we can do that for our other tech industries, I think that is an education opportunity that we can capitalize on. As it relates to platforms, pretty much the same challenge we mentioned earlier. Due to arbitrary reasons, I'm pretty sure we need somebody I need somebody to tell me exactly why these internet-powered platforms that have changed the lives of so many continue to skip the Caribbean for whatever reason, right? I don't know what the opportunity there is. Maybe it is to build our own platform, but we know the risks inherent to that.
Oh, we tried that.
Yeah,
That's a hard one.
But I mean, I think one that I'm quite concerned about, the fact, and Glenn just mentioned it in terms of sometimes when you feel as if to I guess whether or not to legitimize your product, you need to get it in iTunes or, Apple Play, Google, all of these sorts of global, stores. And while that might be useful, but I do think that the opportunities is really about us also developing our own sort of regional, platforms where marketplaces for all intents and purposes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we may have to be conservative in our estimates about the projections that we make initially, but when Glenn and I were talking, and I mentioned it before, that we had a discussion separately about games, and all of them, probably those that are being made publicly available are put in the Apple Store, the Google Store, but they will just be one of thousands or millions of games that are available. How can we then showcase our products a little bit more effectively? And I think the opportunity is really there for us to develop regional marketplaces, that really can help us to sort of push that needle forward.
Strange enough, the 6C is consumption, which is all about the marketplaces. So looking at marketplaces for entertainment, for education, for engagement, and also the environment as well. So again, what are some challenges we might have in each of these spaces, these different types of markets, but also opportunities?
The main thing is similar to what was said before. It is us valuing what is ours and consuming it. I think valuing ourselves is the biggest barrier to us. And by value, don't mean just listening to some music and chipping in a band and that kind of stuff. I mean, really willing to, put our money where our mouth is. We say we love the region, we love our music, we love our artists, but then we still go pirate all this stuff. They pirate their movies, pirate this, pirate that. I'm sure Glenn is going to see the same thing with his games and stuff.
Don't put that out. Take it back. Don't put it out into the universe.
I've had
but that's just
what happens. A musical example is often you see, let's say, a Latin American artist kind of come into American music media. So when Mark Anthony, and I'll never forget this, when he first broke out, I mean, God, I don't even know how long ago, but it was his first entry into the American market. And then when people heard about people like him, Shakira, just their net worth, and you're like, how the hell? And it didn't seem to make sense, but it's because they had first, before they even came to this kind of US market, they had really, really cornered that, Latin American market. And I mean, that's global, right? You have, Spanish speakers all over the country. So yes, they kind of captured it within their own, immediate, their own country, and then, kind of neighbor countries. But, it's literally a universal language that, millions and millions and millions of people speak. So when they came onto the scene in, I guess, in media that we would consume, it was like, oh my God, this brand new person. And, Latin American people were like, absolutely not. This person has been around, sold out concerts, all of these things. The same is with, years ago, I remember the conversation around, gosh, Marshall Montano, he has to be on MTV and VH1 and blah, blah, blah. And his thing is, why is success measured by me being in American media?
Exactly.
Because he says everybody in the Caribbean knows Marshall. Everybody in the diaspora knows Marshall. That is, when you combine that is a phenomenal number of people. Why is that not considered a real success story versus seeing this person, with a video on MTV or BET or wherever?
So speaking of success stories, I mean, the environment for me is an interesting one, where you can also measure success by how sustainable you are for the environment itself. And we know that there is a real tension between technology and ecology, because technology isn't that great for the environment. It does use a lot of energy. It produces a lot of e-waste, which is a problem as well. And of course, we know the sort of social economic inequity that's created by the industry as well. How are we sort of dealing with those concerns in the Caribbean? What are the opportunities for us to deal with that? I'll stay positive in this case.
I do think that, e-waste is something that we haven't really addressed. So I think, like, here in Jamaica, we collect like this environmental levy on various things that are imported. And there may be one or two people who might be doing something very small scale where, e-waste, for example, is concerned. And I think in Trinidad as well, there is something as well. There's an entity that does some work in that respect. But, I do think, though, that the critical mass has not been achieved, and whether or not, or the extent to which, I guess there maybe need to be some sort of government support to really help us to do more with what we have. I think we also have to be mindful, I guess, even just from an e-waste, as much as we're talking about e-waste, but I'm thinking, I don't know whether or not it's happening as much now, but, like, for example, back in the day when, there may have been various NGOs overseas who want to donate computers in particular, and basically it's those that are no longer being used in developed countries that they send down to the region. And the extent to which, though, that we now are saddled with a problem as to how then do we manage the disposal of these things and not necessarily just dump them in some landfill somewhere. So I really am concerned about it, but again, there are opportunities there, and it's the extent to which we can use that, whether or not it's a plastic and you make something out of it. And it may also mean, though, that Jamaica might not be able to do that because we do not have cost efficient and cheap energy, whereas maybe we can ship that to Trinidad and they can do something with it, or Ghana, or other countries that may be able to leverage it. But I think sometimes, unfortunately, in the region, we are so, not necessarily just insular, but we're so selfish. It's just about me and my country and what, and the fact that maybe there could be more that we could do, because it's really not about, I guess we might say Jamaica to the world or Jamaica against the world, but it should be the region against, the world. So
that actually brings us to the final C. Yeah, brings us to the final C, which is community. And by community, we can look at academic communities, industrial communities, regional, and global communities. So again, actually, let's end on a real positive note. What are the big opportunities we have for community across, looking at those 4 different definitions of community?
Well, the first thing I want to say is, like, as bad as COVID has been, it's kind of shown how close we are regionally. One of the things that I have been grateful for, at least for working from home, is that since all the gaming events have closed down, the Game Developer Conference, PAX, those type of things, alternatives have popped up, and those alternatives have made accessing those events a lot easier. So actually broaden the community, right? So as a Jamaican, I can now attend GDC Showcase next week, which wouldn't have been an opportunity in 2018, 2019, because I would have had to buy a ticket for $1,000 and then book a room for a week in San Francisco. Instead, I can just sign up and pay $100 and attend the event. And at that event, I can meet other people from the diaspora. I can meet people who are based out in Ohio. I can touch base with a friend and colleague in South Africa. We can make our community bigger. And by doing that, we can advocate for ourselves more. So I think that is really the challenge and opportunity, is just maintaining that momentum. And the opportunity is that we can extend this to our backyard, right? One of the things we've been trying to do, well, one of the things we've incidentally done with the JGDS is that we have a number of Trinidadians in the group. There's like one person from Guyana. Who else we have? There's one person from South Africa that I mentioned. And this wealth of experience is making no Bajans yet, unfortunately. If you know anybody, send them to the link, jgds.org. Get into the Discord. We're about 200 members strong. But yeah, other than the random plug, I think that is the real thing.
I also think.
Sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that there is a big opportunity with the diaspora. We think about it, and you think that they're all plugged in, but they're not. And to the extent that, whether or not they could be doing more, well, our countries could be doing more through like our consulates and the representatives that we have in other countries to really plug in the diaspora, because I think far too often, many of them want to contribute to their home countries, and maybe even like, whether it's, second generation, first generation, wherever they are, but they don't have their pulse on what is going on sufficiently to help them to make that happen. And to the extent that I think is just a tremendous opportunity that we could probably, leverage a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's twofold about leveraging the diaspora, but then it's also the diaspora going back into as well and bringing up also. I think there's a little bit of that. So it's not about. So it's twofold. It's yes, us understanding that the diaspora is more than remittances, and that we need to tap into them for and other things. It comes back to how we started the conversation. Actually, the people who are involved in developing whatever games, what have you. We talked about different avenues. I would love to have a Caribbean platform that I can go to send money. I send more than remittances, but obviously I can use that one. But spend home, then have to necessarily go through the bank and pay their fees. But there's a way you can contribute to the economy of the region if we had that. That's open externally. We talk about as well platforms like this, or even the games and what have you, and even Move as well, that you can actually market to the diaspora so they know what they're coming home to and who to use and what have you, as well. And then the other way around, lots of our diaspora have gone away and seen things, but they're not taking it home. So there's that. So I'm not putting the diaspora, which I suppose I'm one of here in the UK. So I'm not necessarily putting us off the hook as well to say, why don't people at home do X so that I can come home and have a better experience like I did in England or America, what have you. No, if you've had a better experience, why don't you take that experience home and build something in the Caribbean as well to put us on par with what you've seen.
There's a comment there from a Michael Cumberbatch about a Caribbean Twitter. I really like the idea of a Caribbean LinkedIn. I really, and I mean, Michelle, you are essentially doing that with your, with kind of housing the proposals and whatnot in one space. But I can imagine that opportunity for just Caribbean people, whether they're kind of resident in their own islands or the diaspora, to really connect on a business level and kind of share opportunities and all of that. Agreed. I think that would be fantastic. So techies, get on it.
Rather than create a group on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn groups, Caribbean-based LinkedIn groups already. So, but I mean, I think it's really about. Certainly, there certainly could be more, but I think it's really about trying to somehow figure out how to have the engagement that one needs. So, go ahead.
So I think it's a bit more than that. LinkedIn does not focus on the region. And I say similarly Spotify.
Okay, I understand.
I say similarly Facebook, all these other platforms. We are not a focus.
No, understood.
think
I
it-
misinterpreted the question or the statement. Yes.
it's only recently that I don't even know, up till recently I think Apple Music didn't even have a calypso or soca. You're in world music, so they're not focused on us. And I think that's the thing. When we develop our own, we focus on our own, and then we're able to then have that economy revolving within the region. But back to what Glenn said earlier, something that a mantra that we've had a long time as well here on the show is, but we need to value ourselves first. Because okay, for us to talk about it, someone like Glenn is gonna go create it, and no one's gonna use it. Why?
Hey,
Because
don't go about this thing,
no, no. Sorry. So let me qualify. Not because what you created isn't quality. I just mean the way how we view something sometimes that's created by our own. That's what I mean. I don't mean from what you create. So let me qualify.
No, we speak from a position of a lot of experience in that space, having created stuff over the years, because there is a real education piece needed around our own values of what we create and what we do, so that when we do create it, people are engaged. So our instinct is to look to North America and to look to Europe. That's who we are instinctively. So the education piece, part of that academic C there, Phil, is about how do we educate ourselves to value ourselves, and that is really absolutely critical.
But also to build things that suit the way we work, the way we live as well. Because we shouldn't just go trying to replicate or imitate business models that we've seen, but we have to sometimes invent things that really suit the scale of our economy, the way people consume, the way businesses operate, the way advertising works in the Caribbean as well. We have to look at those things with through a different lens.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. And guys, this is like 2 hours and 10 minutes. I didn't even realize how fast the time is going. Time flies, and I think you can. We probably gonna need to do a part 2 or something of this kind of conversation, because I think there's so much you can delve into. And one of the things that we really aim to do is to get the region talking about these things. And I like the fact that we were able to, I think, Michelle, you mentioned what's happening at CARICOM and what's not in the talk shop, which is something I always say. But, it might have been easy to get people at that level to have a conversation and we not get anywhere. But I think when we have conversations like this, people on the cold face doing things, and have an audience like we do, which are people who are using things and want to and engaging, that's when we can actually move things along, not just from an integration perspective, but as the conversation was just now, from a technological advancement, and so that we can be more than consumers, but be contributors, adopters, and inventors as well of things to go forward. So I want to thank Glenn, Michelle, and Nisa so much for being a part of today's conversation. Guys in the audience, thank them for joining us as well. It was just fantastic. It was really a fantastic conversation.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you so much.
No. So I hope you guys had fun as well. So and I hope you come back the next time that we need you, because I think we're gonna have another part of this. By then, Nisa will be ruling the world in Trinidad and other places.
Yes.
By then I'll be playing at whatever game it is that Glenn's got out and learning all over the place, and you'll be the fount of all knowledge of integrating the region from an ICT perspective there.
No problem.
So we're speaking it all into being for our
Exactly.
We're speaking it all into being for everybody. But look, guys, thanks a lot. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you guys in the living room.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.
Whew, that was good.
Yeah, man.
Good conversation.
Really,
I think we got to have these more and more.
We do. And we got to recognize, what our people are doing. When we talk about gaming, where do we look? We will look at, the big players, and that has its place, but we have to start looking within ourselves and seeing what we are creating and what contribution we are making. Look at what Nisa is doing in terms of green energy. And, we didn't really talk about it, but the significant amount of risk that she must have taken to just say, you know what, I'm going for it. I'm going for it, and I'm going to do it. Right? That
And we
takes a
need
lot
more
of
people
courage,
like
man.
that.
Absolutely.
I don't underestimate how hard it has been, and probably still is as she's making the business work. But we need more people like that to push the boat. Keep going down there and say, look, if you're gonna make me bring it down on a flatbed truck, I gonna bring it down on a flatbed truck.
I come in. I come in with my license.
Because I come in because I need to get this license and we doing this thing. So you need more and more people to be like that.
The thing that stuck out for me there was really about defining what success looks like for us. Because that I'd never really given that enough thought. But we actually do have to, it's not just saying what does the solution look like for us, but it's really what does success look like for us. And success isn't always just about the size of profit that we make. It's also about the size of impact we have on the environment, the size of the impact we have on the community around us as well. Yeah. How sustainable it is, how equitable we create society. There's a lot of other quality factors that we could be using to define success that's really relevant to us in the Caribbean.
And I love what Michelle is doing by serving up the opportunities and making them accessible. Because too often, if you aren't careful, you can miss so many of them. And I think that she's taken the time to bring that portal together so that people can see the opportunities, engage with them, and
really
go after them. Service. Yeah, absolutely, fantastic. So it was great. It was great conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I had a lot of fun. And to guys in the audience, thank you guys for being around. Didi Paris, I see you did say it was your first time last week and you were coming back. So thank you for coming back. Saw you there. Elmi, Charmaine, Valerie. I can stop doing this because I missed so many people with all the comments. I can't go through everything, right? But for everyone who commented, thank you. The show is not what it is if you guys aren't engaging with it. And the whole point of it is that we want the whole region engaged in these conversations. And every week you show up and we have these conversations and we go through all the comments. So thank you guys for coming in and just being part of the show. Phil, I know this is your tech is you. Good conversation.
I thought it was great. Yeah, there were a lot of we went through the 6C stuff there.
You had me there with that one. I thought you were on a different show, but that's okay.
Kept my shirt on.
But that's all right.
No, I thought it was quite a comprehensive conversation. When we got people together, I was thinking, okay, we need somebody to talk about, because we didn't talk a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning, even robotics and so on.
Blocks. Yeah, and
I think there's still a lot to talk about, but we covered a lot of ground, a lot of really important ground today.
No, it was fantastic.
I think so, Corbin.
No, I just want to say a special thanks to our partners at Carib Vision for joining us today, and looking forward to where this conversation goes next. Because as you rightfully say, there's so much more to come on this, and there's so much more to see in terms of products that are being developed across our region. So
indeed, fantastic. And touching on Carib Vision, that's just the beginning. We always say we're going to make the Caribbean smaller, and we're going to continue to partner with people who can help us to fulfill that mission. With your help, of course, guys in the audience. But to everyone who joined us today, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Have a fantastic week. For those, all across the region, stay safe, follow your protocols, go get your vaccines, do your research if you're a bit skeptical. But so far, everything, as far as I can see, Meet says that getting the vaccine helps us get over this issue. But have a fantastic week, guys. Until next time.
See ya. Whew.
Ooh, there we go.
6 C's, huh?
6 C's. Nearly get tight tongue there.